chill on the mic. It's about to get real. Keep it live, that's right. From Pennsylvania to across the globe, it's time for the Steelers All-Star Show.
Welcome to the Steelers by the Lake podcast. My name is James Strong, joined once again by my co-host Cody Tanner. Unfortunately, Nick is out of town, couldn't join us this morning, and Jill not feeling well. Cody also not feeling well, but he's powering through a migraine, and we greatly appreciate that. So we're going to do our best to put a good quality show out there for you guys. Other than the migraine, Cody, how are you feeling this morning?
Other than the migraine, I'm doing all right. Just got busy weeks, busy weekends, and all kinds of things coming up. But we have a lot of football to talk about, so we're here. We're talking football. How are you, James?
Doing well, man. Looking forward to the weekend, and got myself in a nice routine hitting the weights every weekend. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes this weekend. Right into the topics for the day here, and we're going to start off with the reports coming from the locker room from when Mike Tomlin announced to the team that he was no longer going to be their head coach. And, you know, you always kind of wonder how moments like that go. We were lucky enough to hear from one of the Steelers reporters. Multiple of them were in there, but one gave a very detailed description of how things went down. And it's kind of eye-opening for you about how these guys bond with each other over the years. You know, even a short-term connection like it was for Aaron Rodgers, from what was reported, Rodgers went into full tears and just kept on saying, "I'm sorry." Feeling as though he let Mike Tomlin down, and that was why he stepped down. TJ Watt apparently just kept on saying no, and also broke down into tears. So it just kind of goes to show, although the noise was huge outside of the locker room, it sounds like inside the locker room, those guys still really wanted him around. But as we spoke previously, the lack of production in the playoffs is what kicked him out the door. You know, his regular season production was never an issue, but not winning in the playoffs is a kiss of death in this league. So, tough thing to hear, but it does kind of at least give you a little clarity to nobody in the locker room pushing them out.
Yeah, and J.J. Watt, actually, TJ's obviously older brother, went on to kind of take shots at some of the reporting because he felt like that moment should have stayed inside the locker room, which I'm neither here nor there about it. But obviously these players, a lot of them who, you know, Pittsburgh drafted, TJ Watt and stuff like that, have spent their entire career with Mike Tomlin. And so it was obviously an emotional thing. I think without even the reporting, we would have known that. But this obviously draws questions for a lot of things. What players that were on their last year contract were coming back? What players still want to be here, even if they do have a contract? Because Mike Tomlin, no matter how critical I was of his coaching style or things like that, was obviously always a player's coach, and so these guys loved him. And it's a matter now of like when you lose that type of presence in a locker room and the head of a team, what impact is that going to have on us? And I'm not saying that, well, we're screwed forever now, but it might take a year or two to rebuild any type of, presence in that locker room of leadership and stuff like that. But it's definitely going to be a different type of leadership coming in, no matter who the coach is. So
absolutely,
we'll get to that.
Yeah, so you just got to hope that it doesn't turn into the New York Giants type situation after they moved on from Tom Coughlin. Things really fell apart there, and then they've never been able to put it back together. I think Pittsburgh has a good enough nucleus, a good enough front office that they ought to be able to rebuild this in a short period of time, but I don't have any fallacies of a winning record next season. We'll see how the offseason goes. It's a long time between now and then. We don't even know who the quarterback's going to be, let alone the head coach and in many, many other positions. But obviously, as each day goes by, we get a little bit closer to knowing some of those things. And some of that is going to be the futures contracts. We've hinted at this the last few weeks with some of these guys coming and going off of the practice squad, a lot of guys coming in for workouts. And a lot of that was, who do you want on that 90-man offseason roster? Well, Pittsburgh told us 15 new names, and a lot of these names are familiar old names. First off, Max Hurlman and Lou Nichols both made a splash in last year's preseason, so they'll be back on the 90-man roster in the offseason here. Wide receiver Cole Burgess and then also wide receiver Brandon Smith, both added to the offseason roster. John Rhys Plumlee, who's played a little wide receiver and a little quarterback, will be on that roster. Offensive tackle Aiden Williams, offensive guard Stephen Jones, offensive guard Doug Nestor. All three of those names should sound familiar as they were practice squad guys at one point in time. Defensive tackle Kyler Baugh, a couple defensive ends in Anthony Goodlow and KJ Henry. Outside linebacker Julius Welschoff will be returning once again. He is the international exempt player from Germany who's been trying out for the team the last few years. Had a very dominant preseason 2 years ago. We'll see if he's able to return to those ways this upcoming season. Defensive backs Daquan Hardy and Jack Henderson, and long snapper Cal Adomitis. So we've got a long snapper on that roster as well. And you have to wonder with the inconsistencies with Christian Kuntz, if there could possibly be turnover there too. Oftentimes that is a revolving door of one-year contracts for a lot of teams. Pittsburgh's usually pretty consistent. They pick a guy and they stick with him for a while. But there were some struggles from Christian Kuntz on the long snaps this year. So there's definitely something that could be on the list. Right now, I'd say it's pretty low on the priorities because I feel like there's going to be a lot of turnover on this roster and possibly the coaching staff as well. And that's kind of the next thing. But I want to give you a chance to talk on any of those players. I know you were real excited about Max Hurlman last preseason. So he's back. And I think Lou Nichols was somebody that got us pretty excited in the preseason as well.
Yeah, Lou Nichols ran very hard when he got opportunities to run the ball. Obviously there's an understanding of he's running against, second and third team defenses. So there's always that to take into consideration. But Max Hurlman, I thought, was a guy that could be explosive, was able to create separation in running routes, and potentially even being a playmaker in special teams. And I wish we would have been able to see a little bit of him in the regular season. But I really think with Rodgers at the helm, they didn't want to give him any young guys to have to try to coach. They wanted him to have veterans, which is obviously why they brought in MVS. They brought in Adam Thielen. DK Metcalf was here. And I think in the end, although I understand the veteran presence we were experiencing, I think the lack of mobility I think both the lack of mobility in some of the guys. Adam Thielen's not the fastest guy anymore. DK
Correct.
was obviously out the last 2 years. I think MVS is still very, very speedy, but maybe not as agile as he was in his youth. I think we missed out on an opportunity to have some young guys create some separation on in and out routes and stuff like that. But I understand what they were trying to do and what they were going with. It just unfortunately didn't pan out to get us any further than we have been the past 8 years. So.
Yeah,
those are the only two guys that I really wanted to talk about. You're right.
Yeah, those were the big names for me too. A couple of these guys have had some moments over the years. We mentioned, Julius Welschoff had a splash in preseason a couple of years ago. A couple of these offensive linemen have had some moments. Brandon Smith had a cup of coffee on the active roster one week, I think. But outside of that, a lot of these guys are just going to be depth guys. But I'm with you. We want to see one big thing for me this upcoming season is I want to get the Steelers starting running backs off of kick return. And that's where I feel like guys like Max Hurlman and Lou Nichols could possibly make an impact. I believe Hurlman did some returns last year in the preseason. And I would like to see some wide receivers that can do that. But you can't put 165-pound Calvin Austin out there on kick returns because if he gets hit, he's probably going to get concussed. It's just a kickoff is a big man's game. It's not a small man's game. So you do have to have some wide receivers that have a little bit of size to them, a little bit of build to them. And Hurlman, being a former running back, converting to wide receiver, can absolutely do that sort of thing. So I think he would be a good one. a sneaky target for me in this offseason. I'd like to see Pittsburgh possibly go after Parker Washington from the Jaguars. They moved on from him and went towards Jacoby Myers. Myers was unhealthy last weekend, and Parker Washington absolutely tore it up. But he's one of those wide receivers with a thick build to him that could handle a kick return duty. So I think they probably won't need to have him necessarily on the roster. Might look to move him before his rookie contract runs out, which next year would be the final year of his rookie deal. So kind of a sneaky one for me that I'm keeping an eye on. Beyond this list here, Art Rooney did have his press conference, the end of the year press conference, and indicated in that press conference something that a lot of us probably figured was coming, that all current coaches would not be retained unless the incoming head coach decides he wanted to retain them. Thus, he gave permission to all current coaches to go ahead and do interviews with any other teams out there. We're already hearing reports Arthur Smith's had 3 interviews already, some for OC, some for head coach. Unfortunately, Danny Smith appears to already be out there on the trail interviewing for other positions just in case as well. Which his resume, you would think he'd probably get gobbled up pretty quickly if he does decide to leave, if the new coach decides not to retain him. And then the notable thing is that Jaylen Warren, who typically does not do anything on X, apparently he hasn't said anything on Twitter/X, whichever you'd prefer to call it, for a couple of years, jumped on there to go to bat for Eddie Faulkner, his running backs coach. And when you start thinking about the assistant coaches throughout the team, you have to think that that's one that would make sense to retain. The running back room had a very good year this year. The production out of Kenny Gainwell was completely unforeseen in his best season as a pro. The best season for Jaylen Warren as a pro so far. Obviously, we didn't have the best of luck with Caleb Williams, or Caleb Johnson, but I don't think that one falls on the coaching staff. I think he just made some poor decisions on the field there. So you do wonder how many, if any, of these assistant coaches will still be around. The options there, but who comes in? Who comes in, and do they know him?
Yeah, it's gonna be big questions moving forward, and like we've already discussed, and I know this is a year in review show, and we'll get to that here in just a second. But this coaching carousel that we're about to experience in Pittsburgh is probably going to be the most drastic we've experienced probably since I don't think Tomlin. I don't think Tomlin was a drastic change. I think it's probably since Bill Cowher came in.
Yeah, because Tomlin kept Dick LeBeau, and he kept some of those coaches. I mean, he changed a lot of them, but he kept the biggest figure there, which, I would say that's a smart decision. So hopefully the incoming guy, if he doesn't have a whole staff ready to go, he cherry picks the better coaches off of the old staff and retains them, because there's a few of them that are worth keeping, I think.
No, I agree with you. But we'll have to wait and see who he decides to keep and hang on to.
Absolutely. So let's kick this off to the year in review, Cody. This is where we talk to everybody about how things went for Pittsburgh versus expectations. If you were betting on the Steelers in the preseason, they had the over-under, I think it's 7.5 wins or 8 wins or something. So Pittsburgh exceeded that, but that was not a surprise to any of us on this show. I think all of us had the Steelers at right around 9 or 10 wins this season. So kind of hit the expectation. Unfortunately, we were all hoping that Pittsburgh would exceed those expectations and did not, kind of landed right on them. So we're going to talk about how these players did throughout the year, and also I'm going to pull back up. It's going to take me a minute to find it, so I'll let you talk on Aaron Rodgers for a minute while I'm looking for our preseason predictions. We had our bold predictions at the beginning of the year. This is the time of year that we get a chance to kind of laugh at ourselves for how bold we were and how close or not so close we ended up being when it came down to it. So, oh, wow, that was quicker than I thought. I found the bold predictions.
They kind of stand out. So
you want to talk players, you want to talk bold predictions and get it out of the way.
I think are you able, if we go through the players, are you able to bring up the bold predictions when they make sense? Is that
Sure.
something that we could do? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm going to look through all of them just so that it's fresh in my mind while you start talking on it.
No, yeah, that's fine. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, arguably the best. I don't even say arguably, the best quarterback we've had since Big Ben's retiring, and definitely probably even better than him in his final year or two. So Aaron Rodgers at the end of the year had a little over 65.5% completion percentage with 3,300 yards passing. I think the big rough part about that is the 6.7 average. I feel like on average, the quarterbacks in this league have a higher passing percentage, or average yards per reception than that, or pass. And so I might check a couple other guys just to see, but 6.7 seems low to me. I know that a lot of time we were throwing behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage. The 24-7 is still a great touchdown to interception ratio. That's what we brought him in for, was to not turn the ball over. Unfortunately, he was sacked 29 times, which is still, there's guys that get in the 50s. So that kind of a little shout out to our offensive line. But overall, I don't think quite as explosive as the year Pittsburgh was hoping for with him. I think a lot of us were like, okay, 4,500 yards. And we didn't even break 3,500. I think there was potential there. There was opportunity, but we weren't good at the long balls early in the year, and we didn't throw in the middle of the field much at all throughout the entire year. So I think those numbers reflect that a little bit, but still one of the best years Pittsburgh has had at the quarterback position in a while.
Yeah, I couldn't possibly disagree with you in any of that. The deep ball just wasn't there for Pittsburgh through most of the season. I want to say it was probably about week 12 or 13 when they finally started hitting that. That first Ravens game was probably it, right? First offensive play of the game, he hits DK Metcalf deep, and I felt like after that, Aaron was starting to hit the deep ball a little bit. But previous to that, it seemed like the deep ball just never got completed. It was a really low percentage on the year. And then that kind of naturally drops down your yards per completion average, just like you're talking about. If you're not completing deep balls, if it's a lot of checkdowns and dump offs, you can't expect that number to be that high. But again, these numbers that Aaron Rodgers put up this past season for us blew away everything we've seen for the last 5+ years at that position. So it puts you in an optimistic position if you're somebody like me, because things are trending back in the right direction now. Do I expect Aaron Rodgers to come back for another season? No, I don't. I know Max Starks recently put it out there that he said he thought that Aaron would come back for another season. It seems most people's opinion is that Aaron only came to play for Pittsburgh this year to play for Mike Tomlin. So I would be surprised if he came back. And honestly, with the opportunity that they have in front of themselves, with the turnover that's going to be there in the coaching staff, it's a good time to just start giving some different people a chance. Instead of going the washed-up veteran route like we tried the last few years, it's time to give younger guys like Will Howard a serious look. Maybe you take another guy in this upcoming class. It looks like the quarterback position's a little bit weak in this upcoming draft class. Seems like it's the one person at the top, Fernando Mendoza, and then a pretty massive drop-off after that. But maybe you take a shot at one of those dudes in the middle round just to give Will Howard a little bit of competition. Let these guys play it out, and let's see what happens. But at least things trending in the correct direction there. So it's a big question mark for Pittsburgh going forward. Where do they go from here? Who's even going to be on the roster at the quarterback position? I believe Mason Rudolph was a 2-year deal. Will Howard's on a rookie deal. Obviously, that's a 4-year. So you're going to have the two of them. Outside of that, enormous question mark at the quarterback position. So we will see where that goes. To the running back position, we had some pretty darn good performances from these guys. It just felt like not enough volume was there, right? Probably the timing of when run plays were called versus when they could have been called. Personnel at certain times. Sometimes we saw in like goal line type formations, Kenny Gainwell getting those short yardage carries where it might have made more sense for Jaylen Warren to get them. But in the end, Jaylen Warren goes for 958 yards and a 4.5 yard per carry average. I told Cody before this show I was curious how long it's been since Pittsburgh had a rusher that ran for 4.5 yards per carry that was the feature back for the team. He looked it up for me, and it's been since James Conner's second year.
Second year.
So his first and second year, each of those he hit 4.5 yards a carry. But ever since then, the last 2 years of Conner, all 4 years of Najee Harris, we did not get a running back at 4.5 yards a carry. So that's kind of a monumental thing for Pittsburgh and does show the success of the running game this season. Was the volume there that we wanted? No, it was 1,700 yards, and that's in 17 games, so it's a little over 100 yards a game, just barely over 100 yards a game. We were definitely looking for more than that. There's no doubt about that. One of our preseason predictions here in our bold predictions, one of us had that the Steelers would lead the AFC North in team rushing yards. I don't think we need to look up the Ravens to see that the Ravens had more than Pittsburgh did. That was number 2 for Cody. Unfortunately, not true. As you're going to see, I don't think any of us hit any of our preseason bold predictions this year, which just means we were very, very bold this year. A couple came kind of close. That one was not the one, unfortunately. But, yeah, overall, I was pretty happy with Jaylen Warren's performance this year. And that 958 yards I know he missed at least one game. Was it 2 games he missed this season? He wasn't in the Minnesota game in Ireland, and then I feel like there was a second one too. Jaylen Warren. It says he played 16 games, but I feel like there was another one that he was kind of dinged up, and it was the bulk of the carries was Gainwell and not him. Because I remember twice Gainwell kind of needed to be the feature back, and he shined in both of them.
So it was Baltimore in December. Baltimore in December, he only had 8 carries.
Yeah, so that must have been the other one I'm thinking of, where he was coming off of an injury or something, and Gainwell kind of carried the load that day.
Yeah, because everything else looks pretty consistent.
Yeah. So
well, let me clarify. I mean, in a lot of these games, a feature back would normally get 20 to 30 carries a game.
I'd say at least 15 to 20.
Okay, you want to know how many times he got over 15 carries?
Probably like 3 or 4.
4 times.
Yeah.
4 times he got over 15 carries.
And that's kind of an Arthur Smith thing, right? Arthur Smith is known for having a pretty heavy rotation with his running backs and not really relying on one guy too heavily. And I think sometimes that's to a detriment. It's difficult for a guy to get in a rhythm when he's not seeing the ball a bunch.
Yep, he broke 100 yards twice this year. In Indianapolis, he had 2 touchdowns on 31 yards. And then in Buffalo and Chicago, he had 1 touchdown in each of those games on 35 and 68 yards, respectively. So the only real game that he had a lot of yards and touchdowns in was at Detroit, where he went off for 14 for 143.
Yeah, and that was 2 45-yard touchdown runs in that game, I believe.
Yep. I don't think we utilized the run properly this year at all. And I think if you did, I think we'd be looking at a drastically different, at least record. I don't think we would have lost as much had we been able to run the ball correctly. But I guess you could say that about any aspect of the game. If we had done something better, we might have been able to play better. So I don't want to use that as a crutch statement when it's probably real for a lot of things. But Pittsburgh has been known to be a running offense, and I felt like we couldn't do it properly this year.
Yeah, they definitely had a tough time getting it going, and it's tough to blame like the offensive line. The offensive line was pretty consistent, right? We had mostly the same starting lineup other than when Broderick Jones went down and we saw a little bit of injury time at left guard there as well. But outside of that, it was pretty consistent with the other 3. So you got to kind of hope that goes better for us next season with the consistency we had from Frazier, McCormick, Fatanu on the right-hand side. Hopefully they can build off of that to the left-hand side and get a more dominant run game going. But, yeah, it was frustrating for me because it felt like in a few situations there, the entire fan base agreed that either it was a bad call or the wrong personnel on the field for those short yardage conversions. That's one thing I'm very excited to see a new offensive coordinator for, somebody who's a little bit better in play calls and short yardage.
Yep.
Because I did not. That was my biggest offense this year in play calling. A lot of folks didn't like play calling almost every single game. I didn't care for it in short yardage the most. That was where I was most upset about play calling. You didn't utilize the one-on-one matchups with Darnell Washington anywhere enough, and you had the wrong personnel a lot of times on the field. Out of the running game, one thing that was a big surprise to probably all of us this year is Pittsburgh rolled out with a new formation called the Spartan formation, putting Connor Heyward in the quarterback position with Darnell Washington pushing him. And it was extremely successful for Pittsburgh the entire season. So that was something that I thought was pretty awesome and nice to see a change. Just adapting. Pittsburgh adapted, right? It's successful. It's in the league. It's probably going to get outlawed this offseason. But while it's there, let's take advantage of it.
Yep. Yeah, and that was something that we talked about last week about how we really wish, even with seeing the different looks that we saw from that, a couple handoffs, a couple running outside instead of pushing at the middle, we wish we would have saw more from it. But we really didn't get a chance to see that as Pittsburgh never played long enough into the playoffs or got in a situation to continue to use it. So we'll have to see what happens moving forward. But excited to see what Pittsburgh can potentially do with creativity next year, depending on who comes in as offensive coordinator.
Absolutely. Anyone else you want to talk on the running game? I mean, we mentioned briefly Caleb Johnson didn't have a very good season. He'll get a chance to kind of reset next year with a new coaching staff, new offense, and we'll see how he performs next year. I would say probably a pleasant surprise of Johnny Smith running the football. I didn't think that would be the only place that he would look good, but apparently he's better at running the football than he is at receiving.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk about Johnny, but I know we're going to. 9 carries for 70 yards is a good average, but I think I'm even more impressed with Connor Heyward's ability to run the ball with his 43 yards. Not a lot of average, but he broke off that one big 29-yard run. So was excited to see him. And here's the other thing that I think a lot of people haven't questioned or processed yet. This could be Connor Heyward's way out too, because the next guy that comes in may not think that family matters quite as much as Tomlin did. Tomlin was always hiring and bringing in brothers and family members and stuff like that. Obviously, even Joey Porter Jr., but that's been a good pickup, and we'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, Connor Heyward, I think it's safe to say people understand that he probably only got an opportunity here because of his brother, but he did make the most of it a lot of times. So going to be very interesting to see what happens with him moving forward.
Yeah, effort was never an issue with Connor, right? That was something that we could all agree on. He gave 100% every play. He really excelled in special teams early on in his career with Pittsburgh as a coverage guy, getting a lot of tackles. And then we ended up with a really important role for him this year when short yardage conversion was at its most important. He did his thing, man. So I'm kind of proud of Connor, but at the same point in time, like you mentioned, it's the last year of his rookie deal. Pittsburgh does not have to bring him back. They probably move on from him, is my guess, especially with Cam Heyward going into the final year of his deal. And you never know. Cam might decide to hang him up. There's a real possibility that Cam says, well, I've had fun. I don't want to go another year without Coach T. It's a possibility. And if that were to happen, then there would be very little reason for Pittsburgh to retain Connor Heyward, I would think.
Yeah. It'll be a sad day just because I think everyone's learned to love the Heywards. Obviously, Cameron for bigger and more reasons than Connor, but Only time will tell. I wonder if he's waiting. I wonder if he's just kind of waiting to see how things fold out to decide. I feel like for him specifically, that'll be a big processing thing. But no, let's go ahead and bounce to the receivers and the receiving. Go ahead.
One more real quick. One more of the bold predictions, and probably one of my biggest whiffs on this one. One of mine was I thought that Caleb Johnson would be the starting running back by week 6 due to the fact that they drafted him in the 3rd round. I think by week 6 he wasn't really even playing anymore. So pretty nasty whiff on that on my part on that one.
Yeah, that was a rough one. But hopefully we get to see some more of him. I'm obviously he'll be here next week or next year, so I'm excited to see more of him. In the receiving room, we had a lot of guys get involved. I mean, there's a number of players on this. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has a catch, which was from him, so that was concerning. Spencer Anderson had a catch. There were a lot of guys involved. I think the total number here is, let me do this math real quick, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16 guys, if you include Aaron. 16 guys got catches this year, which is a lot. You obviously had number 1, 2, 3, and 4 tight ends get involved. You had a handful of wide receivers that didn't often see the field, with Ken Skoranek catching the first touchdown that nobody expected. That wasn't on anyone's bingo card.
Nope.
Scotty Miller got involved, Roman Wilson, Adam Thielen, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, obviously all of the running backs, I think, as well. Caleb Johnson even got a catch. But obviously the big ones, DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, and Kenneth Gainwell were the top guys this year. DK having 850 yards and 6 touchdowns, Pat having 486, and Gainwell having 486 with 4 and 3 touchdowns respectively for them. The cool thing about the way this offense went, this Arthur Smith offense, was you got people involved, but I just felt like the timing and the placement of where and how to get people involved was not in a way that best suited getting things done on offense, moving the ball downfield. The number of times we threw to Kenny Gainwell or Jaylen Warren 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage drove me nuts, because you're trying to go downfield and you're putting the starting point, the line of scrimmage, back 7 more yards and saying, all right, let's try from here. And I realize that's a normal thing to see in the NFL. However, I think when we saw it and how often we saw it was a problem for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I feel like there needs to be more of a focus on the quarterback checking out of plays like that, depending on how the defense is lined up, right? So if you're going to run that wide receiver or tight end screen, you need to look at the defense, and the defensive backs need to be off of the line of scrimmage. If they're in press and they're up right on the line of scrimmage, that play is not going to work. If they're in a zone where there's like one defender there and you've got 2 guys there, that's a great situation to call it. Go ahead. Otherwise, you probably need to call out of that play, because it is very much so something that you get up to the line of scrimmage, see how the defense is lined up, and make adjustments based off of how they're lined up. So I think that was probably the biggest frustration for me on that is you call that play, and could the play work? Sure. But you do absolutely, as a quarterback, have to look at the defense and say, hey, there's too many guys lined up too close to the line of scrimmage. There's no way this works. And as an offensive coordinator, you have to have enough humility to allow your quarterback to properly identify that and then change the play into something else. So that's something I have to agree with you on this. We've got a few wide receiver and tight end bold predictions, so I'm just going to knock them all out while we're here, since we're in that area. Yep. One of Jill's was tight ends with a total of double-digit touchdowns on the season receiving. We ended up with 8, so she was close. Not too bad on that one. One of hers was also win at least 11 games all at home, all the home games. So that one did not hit either. We're just that doesn't really fall into any one category. So
that's fine.
Now while we're there, Cody, your first one was 7 total players with 500 plus receiving yards. Unfortunately, our offense was nowhere near prolific enough for that one. We had Nick Darnell Washington with 10 plus touchdowns. Unfortunately, we missed on that one too. He had one. He had one, yeah. Roman Wilson was Nick's third one. He had Roman Wilson leading the wide receivers in receptions. He originally had team, and then he changed it to wide receivers. He had how many catches on the year? It looks
12.
like 12 catches on the year. So he fell just a bit short on that one.
He had 2 wide receivers, 3 tight ends, and both starting running backs ahead of him.
Yeah. Which you have to wonder if they would actually played him like the second half of the season, would he have had a chance? I don't know. I felt like there were some promising signs from Roman this year early on. He had a couple of, what do you have, like 2 touchdowns, I want to say? Yeah, 2 of them. And both of those touchdowns were contested catch situations where he kind of had to like monster grip the football and hold on to it while someone was trying to rip it out of his hands.
Yeah.
And I liked that out of him. You know, with 12 catches, having 2 of them being touchdowns, that's a fantastic percentage. So as much as Roman didn't get a big chance to contribute this year, I think the turnover in coaching staff is an excellent thing for Roman Wilson. He's absolutely going to get a chance to prove himself next year. You don't just cut third-round draft picks, especially when you have a wide receiver room that is such a huge question mark right now. I mean, the one asset that you feel like to the most part you can count on, although he had 6 drops on the season, is DK Metcalf. Unfortunately, he had 2 drops in that postseason game that really reared its ugly head there. But outside of that, he had some very productive games this year and showed what kind of blocking Pittsburgh is looking for from the wide receiver position. I remember the game that Jaylen Warren had those 2 45-yard touchdown runs that we spoke about earlier. One of those touchdown runs, DK was escorting him the whole way down the field. He took care of his man and then went down the field. And it reminded me of like a defensive interception where you have that motorcade of defenders running down with you, escorting you. DK was escorting Jaylen on that. And you had to feel like if anybody could have possibly ran that situation down, there was no way in the world they were getting through DK. And that's a nice situation. So that kind of effort is something that you've got to have from your number one. And it felt like for the first time in a long time, we had that. So was it everything we were hoping for receiving wise, receptions, yards, touchdowns? No, I think that would have fallen short for any of us for our hopes for DK on the season. But there were high moments that were good enough that it does make me feel good about the future of the position in having a guy at the front who is not too good to run block. Like Deontay Johnson felt like he was too good to run block. George Pickens definitely didn't run block. Like you had this over and over. These guys got a big head from having good production and receiving and then decided they didn't have to run block anymore. That's not the example that Hines Ward set for these guys. Hines Ward set a whole nother level of expectation blocking as a wide receiver. And it caught on for a short time and then it just fell off. Even the early to mid Antonio Brown years, you'd see Antonio hit key blocks to spring guys like Juju on long runs. So it fell off after those guys left, after Juju left, after Antonio went crazy and left. The blocking out of the wide receiver position felt like it became kind of optional instead of something that was a requirement. So I do really like that we've got that going on again in that room. And I'm excited because I feel like this is a year that Pittsburgh might finally go back into the draft and take a couple wide receivers instead of just one. It's time to reload this group. Like you said, we were reliable out of Adam Thielen. He was a reliable receiver. He was a nice addition to the room. He's 35, and he retired. So that's not a crutch you can lean on for next season. So we need a viable number 2 wide receiver. Jonnu Smith was supposed to be the guy that could be that wide receiver 2 type. Turns in his worst career performance. So that wasn't really much of an option. And I think all of us, I'll speak for Jill and I'll speak for Nick on this, and I don't think you'll disagree with me either. We're all hoping that the Steelers move on from Jonnu Smith. That was an Arthur Smith obsession that went very, very poorly in Pittsburgh. And maybe he's dropping off in play because he's 29 years old. or maybe he's just a gross misfit for our system and just did not fit the system in any way. Whatever it was a failed experiment, and they need to move on from him. But he does have a $15 million tag for next year, so it might be a tougher thing to do. You might have to just swallow some of that cap.
The only thing that makes sense to me, if I go back and look at how his year was last year in Miami to now,
yeah,
is he was just like, there had to have been some personal upset about his role. I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense to me, because seeing him play, I did not see the effort that I would expect from a guy. And it's one thing if it's a game or two, but every single game I saw lack of effort, lack of potential understanding of the play call. And it was just one thing after another. And Pittsburgh has, I mean, this year, Pittsburgh has 12 draft picks this year. And so I'm hoping, like you said, they reload that wide receiver room. You could easily draft 2 or 3 guys and still get other needs addressed. But I would swallow cap on this. I mean, I would say, you know, hey, we're going to take a hit, but this guy's not worth having in the room.
Yeah.
Especially when you got Darnell. I mean, Darnell,
yes.
Oh my gosh, drastically better player. And I'm sure you could get a third string blocking tight end in this draft that can come in and take care of stuff in the 4th or 5th round. So,
yeah, that's kind of my exact perspective of this. Is you should probably consider, now I haven't seen how things played out as far as these compensatory picks and what we're officially going to get versus what we were projected to
I can tell you.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
So we have a third compensatory. Yeah. So that gives us 3 in the 3rd.
So we ended up with 3 third-round picks. That's
we
incredible.
We have 2 4th-round picks.
Yeah.
And 2 6th-round picks that are both compensatory picks. So we had a 6, and we traded that away to acquire Kyle Duggar.
Yeah, which was fine.
And then we got 2 6 compensatories. So overall, 4 compensatory picks. The end result is 1 first-rounder, 1 second-rounder, 3 third-round picks, 1 of our own, the compensatory pick, and then the 1 acquired from Dallas in the George Pickens trade. And then 2 4th-rounders, 1 of our own in the compensatory, 1 5th-rounder, and then 2 6th-rounders, which are both compensatory, and then 2 7th-rounders acquired in that trade as well for Kyle Duggar. New England Patriots had that pick from the Saints, and now it's ours. So
my thought on this is very similar to yours. Let's move on from Jonnu Smith. If you can get a 6th or 7th round pick for him, great. If not, cut him loose. This, from my understanding from the podcasts I listen to, from the research I've done so far, seems to be a year that has a lot of tight end talent. A very similar year to the year that Darnell Washington came out. So it sounds like a great year to go get another prototype all-around tight end, a guy that can receive but is a plus blocker. Like, I don't care if he caught 50 or 60 balls in college, because most of these guys aren't catching more than 30 anymore anyway. But give me a guy that is a plus side blocker that can come in and be your number 3. That way, if something happens to Pat, if something happens to Darnell, you can plug them in and you don't have to change the whole offense. That was the biggest problem, is once Darnell went down, we didn't know what to do. Nobody could fill that role. And Pat is a decent blocker, but he's nowhere near the level of blocker that Darnell Washington is. And that's not a knock on Pat. There really aren't any tight ends in the league that can block like Darnell Washington can. You're not going to get one in this draft most likely either, but you can get somebody that is at least another sufficient to plus level blocker. And then you're not in the situation where you're trying to put Jonnu, who was an awful blocker, out there, and then plays just getting completely blown up because he can't handle his assignment.
Yeah.
So this is the year to do this. This is the year that you go ahead and get that number 3 tight end, and you value it in a similar mold to how you did with Darnell. That this is not necessarily a backup position. If you looked at the depth chart this year, Pittsburgh listed 3 tight ends as starters.
Yep.
There was tight end 1, and there was like tight end A, which was Freiermuth and Jonnu co-listed, and then the tight end B, who was also listed as a starter, that was Darnell Washington. So let's treat it that way. in a target in that third round or greater. I honestly don't want it to be a second or a first rounder because he's not going to be your number one or number two. But I'd love to see it in the third round, maybe fourth round if you don't find one in the third. But value it enough that you get a high enough skill level dude that he can handle these assignments. Tight end's just too important of a position to ignore, especially if you're going to keep rolling out 4 tight ends. Let's go get a guy who can handle these assignments and play at a good level.
Our 7th pick in the draft would still be a 4th rounder. I mean,
That's
you
incredible.
have time. You have time to go get somebody.
And you can get good quality dudes in the 4th round. I mean, wasn't Nick Herbig a 4th rounder?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping Pittsburgh uses Johnny to get some trade capital for next year, because next year's draft is we're running dry. I mean, we have a 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and then we have the 5th from Dallas. Then we don't have a 6th, and then we have 2 7s. So it's a very quiet draft next year in the sense of draft capital, and hopefully Pittsburgh can get some more next year. But excited for this year because it's in Pittsburgh, and so you're going to get to see a lot of drafts happen from Pittsburgh for Pittsburgh.
All right. Anybody else you want to touch on this receiving unit in general, tight ends or wide receivers?
No. I thought overall the wide receiver room, like we said, was quiet from wide receivers specifically. I thought running backs played well, but were overused in this area. And then obviously Pat wasn't. I mean, Pat should have been the number 1 targeted guy, in my opinion. Like, that's just I understand DK's size and everything, but especially with the drops throughout the year, Pat had 13. Excuse me, not drops. 13 incompletions. 13 to DK's 40. So
yeah,
I think you get a more consistent pass completion out of passing to Pat.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can figure this real quick here. So that was a 76% completion rate when you threw it his direction. That's incredible, man. That's incredible. And that, exactly as Cody just said, that absolutely has to be a big focus going forward. Pat played the perfect role this year. He was a fantastic teammate. He never whined and complained about not having enough targets. But let you believe all of us here complained about him not having enough targets. And I think most of Steeler Nation complained about Pat not having enough targets. Calvin Austin, I think we'll just touch on this real quickly here. This was the 4th year of his rookie deal. I kind of don't expect Pittsburgh to bring Calvin back. I was hoping for more out of him this year. He has 31 catches on the season, three touchdowns. And it just didn't go the way we had hoped, right? We hoped that he'd develop into a really good quality number 2. He got his opportunity as the punt return man and really didn't have a lot going on there either. So unfortunately, it might be time to move on from Cal as well. And you got to start hitting on these 3rd and 4th round wide receivers. We've spoken about this over and over. You got to hit on them.
I'm going to argue that just in the sense of you got to give them a chance to show something. I mean, obviously Calvin could have done more. I think Calvin's biggest issue was his size, and not being able to create enough separation in certain routes. But I feel like with Roman Wilson, thinking back to him specifically, he hasn't gotten enough chances.
Correct.
And that's all because of Aaron wanting those veteran guys. So I'm excited for them. I've already said this once, and I'm just kind of reiterating. I'm excited to move on, and I feel bad for Calvin because I don't think Calvin got quite a proper chance. I feel like they mostly just used him for deep balls, like, hey, go deep and try to beat somebody. But if you have a 5'10", 6-foot corner, you gotta really beat them to get a chance, and then have a perfectly thrown ball to really take advantage of that. So I'm hoping Roman Wilson gets a chance before they give him the boot, and then obviously that you gotta bring these guys in the 4th and 5th round, and then let them play. Let them play.
Yeah, absolutely. Just unfortunately not the splash they were looking for from Calvin. And you're right. I personally, I think we spoke about this a few times over the course of the season. I wanted Pittsburgh to draw some stuff up like we saw in the Kansas City Chiefs and the Miami Dolphin offense for their speed guys, where you put them in a situation where guys have to keep up with them, not necessarily vertically, but horizontally. Fake like you're running in and then go out full speed. Most guys aren't going to be able to run with you, and it'll naturally create separation. Stuff like that just was not in the playbook and did not put them in the situations where they could win on a regular basis.
The first touchdown pass to Ben Skoranek was that exact play, and he's not fast, and you created separation.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say he's not fast, but he's not Calvin Austin fast.
No, nobody is, though. I guess I should rephrase, because DK, I think, ran almost exactly the same 40-yard dash, which is crazy at like 60 pounds heavier. But let's move on to the offensive line. There's no real number breakdown that we're going to do on this, unless you've got something. You look almost like
I have PFF pulled up. They were ranked number 8. We all know PFF is. We are not fans of PFF here at Steelers by the Lake. I think that's safe to say. It is owned and operated by Chris Collinsworth.
Correct.
And he is a Steelers hater. However, every now and then he says some stuff that's right, but it feels wrong for me to say, hey, I'm not going to believe him on the bad stuff, but believe him on the good stuff.
Yeah.
So take this with a grain of salt. They were ranked number 8, which I think is a little high, personally. But again, I mean, this team played very, very well. I think we have our starters on the right side and in the middle for the next, hopefully, 10 years, with Frazier, McCormick, and Fatanu all finishing their sophomore years this year. They're developing very, very well together. Isaac Siamalu, I don't know if there's a future in Pittsburgh for him. I think he was probably one of the guys that struggled the most this year. And then obviously we don't know what's going on with the Broderick Jones neck injury. He's seen improvement this year going back to left tackle. Dylan Cook stepped in and played fairly well for being a backup. But the group as a whole gave up 117 pressures and 17 sacks on 596 passing attempts. So, or pass blocking snaps, excuse me. So I think the team played well. I think realistically, like I said, Frazier, McCormick, and Fatanu are going to be studs as they continue to grow and continue to improve and develop that chemistry. I'm excited because we talked about this, I think, last year or maybe in the offseason. You know, we haven't seen guys that have played together the way we saw Pouncey, DeCastro, you know, even Villanueva.
Yeah.
Who was on the right side?
Gilbert, Marcus Gilbert.
Like, we haven't seen a group of guys stick around that long and develop that chemistry. And I think that is very, very important for the success of an offensive line. You have some guys that can come in and kind of roll with stuff, but I think the offensive lines that have guys that stick around for a couple of years, you really, really get to see some success.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at those numbers that you spouted off, only allowing 17 sacks from this offensive line is really good.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty optimistic about this group. I'm anxious to hear what's going on with Broderick Jones, because I felt like he was putting together his best year, and by a decent margin. You know, last year I felt like he was way better in the second half than he was in the first half. This year, he had very, very few penalties against him and was not letting up pressures and sacks either. So I thought he was putting together a very good season. The first 3 or so performances out of Dylan Cook were awesome. And then it kind of tailed off a little bit, but he also started going up against much more difficult competition. So when you're talking about a guy that went from your practice squad to your starting left tackle, he drastically exceeded expectations, and you have to be excited about him coming back as a possible top reserve left tackle, right tackle. Just having Dylan Cook on the roster next year is something to be optimistic about, in my opinion.
Spencer Anderson we didn't even talk about.
Yeah, and Spencer Anderson too. You know, he played as the additional offensive lineman in the tight end position technically, but a tackle eligible, whatever you prefer to call it. And when he was on the field, the running game typically was quite successful. Not every time. He did catch one pass on the season. I was stoked to see the big man catch. It's always a fun thing. But that's part of this conversation for Isaac Seumalo, right? We're mostly expecting Pittsburgh to move on from him because his contract expires at the end of the season here. And he's on the wrong side of 30. I don't know how old he is. I want to say he's like 32 or 33 or something. But definitely not in a situation where he's going to improve in his career. If anything, he's going to go backwards. He's had a lot of soft tissue injuries the last few years with triceps and pectorals and stuff that directly affects your ability to push and stop someone who's trying to get beyond you. And that has to impact your ability to play in games. So,
You're talking about Isaac, correct?
Isaac Seumalo, yeah.
32 years old. He's an October birthday, so he'll be 33 next year.
Yeah, so I would think that Pittsburgh would likely move on from him just to continue with the youth movement in this room. I think it's a low-key possibility in the first round. If Pittsburgh gets up there at pick number 21 and the top guard's still available, you telling me you could possibly get an all-pro guard in the first round? At pick 21, it's difficult to get an all-pro or a Pro Bowl caliber guy.
And then you're not drafting offensive line again until late in the draft, if at all.
Yeah, mid to late round guys.
Because you're not going to. Yeah, your other 3-4 guys are stapled in as starters next year. Yep. Roderick's going to start as long as the neck injury is good, and then the other 3 guys are easy starters. So
yeah, definitely something to keep your eye on.
Yeah, they definitely draft. I think they draft one more just for depth. But it's exciting to see 12 picks this year with the number of things that we can get accomplished.
Absolutely. I want to say one of mine just got exposed again. Yes, I had both Zach Frazier and Troy Fautanu getting to the Pro Bowl. Now, I don't know how that went as far as alternate voting because they don't ever tell you. So is there a possibility that maybe some guys opt out of the Pro Bowl and they sneak their way in? Sure. But as of right now, neither one of them made it to the Pro Bowl. So that one also exposed, unfortunately. Let me make sure there's nothing else that I need to do. Nope, I think the rest of them are going to be defensive keys for us. Yeah.
How do you want to do defense? Do you want to go through the same way we do D-line?
Yeah, let's start with the big boys first, the D-line, and then move to outside linebackers and middle linebackers and go right on through the process here. Cam Heyward, let's start there where we probably should, right?
Yep.
I think this season he was our best defensive player consistently week after week. And the numbers aren't going to tell you based off of like sack production or anything like that. Now, what I will tell you is that total tackles for a defensive lineman, you don't ever see a defensive tackle with 78 tackles at the end of the season. That's crazy high. So Cam was absolutely dominant when it came to run stopping with 9 tackles for loss on the season. 6 passes deflected, 3.5 sacks. He was just extremely disruptive all season long, and you really couldn't run at him. Teams kind of had to run away from him all season long. We would have loved to have seen more sacks out of him. He would have too, because all the bonus structure that he signed on that extension, well, not extension, but reworking of his contract was all tied to sack totals, and he had a low number this year. But he was a true leader on and off the field this season. And you just wonder, is this it for him? He has one more year on his deal. Will he play it or will he decide to retire? Only time will tell on that.
Yeah.
But couldn't ask for more out of him, really.
No, and I think the cool thing here, especially with him being the veteran, is you see him smack dab in the middle of Keanu Benton and Derek Harmon for sacks. You know, Benton ended the season with 5.5, Cam had 3.5, and then Harmon had 3. And they're all learning from him. I know it's a very, very small number. Some would consider it not even worth talking about. But when Cam has made a career out of putting his hands up and knocking balls down, each of them also had pass deflections in this year. So, and I think one of them was a pick, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know who it was or who it would have been that got the pick, but it's exciting to see these younger guys get involved. And the fact that both of them had over 3 sacks this year, I mean, that's trending in the right direction.
Big time.
When you process the injuries we had around all other places of the defense, excited to see these guys really get involved. And Harmon only played in 12 games this year. So you'd have to imagine had he played in more, that 3 sacks would have turned into 4 or 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only agree with you on there. What we noticed this year right away is a big difference between games with Derek Harmon on the field and Derek Harmon off. This team was drastically better stopping the run with Derek Harmon on the field. So an immediate impact from that first rounder. Keanu Benton started the season off kind of rough, but as the season went on, he became better and better against the run. Really embarrassing Tyler Linderbaum in the final game of the season, throwing him all over the place and making him miss nonstop. The 5.5 sacks was his best so far as a pro, and he keeps trending in the right direction, right? So that has to make us feel optimistic about Keanu Benton too, is now that he made it to 5.5, what can we get out of him next year? Maybe we'll see 7.5 or 8 sacks next year out of him. You start talking about 7.5, 8 sacks from a defensive lineman, and people start talking about you in the Pro Bowl conversation. So this is a really important season for him, and it was also his 3rd season, so final year of his rookie deal coming up this upcoming season. And you feel good about the core nucleus of Keanu Benton, Derek Harmon going forward. That does roll into Y.A. Black. He had an increased role as the season went along, played a lot when Derek Harmon was down, and sometimes good, sometimes not as good. But we did have some production out of Y.A. Black. He was able to move the pocket. Sometimes he got driven off the ball and moved backwards, but that's kind of a curse of being such a tall dude. It's easier for guys to get underneath your pads and move you. So I thought those 3 really showed some promise for Pittsburgh, but also exposed one of my bad bold takes as I had Y.A. Black leading the team in pass deflections, and I think he had, 1 on the year?
He had 1, but he did lead all defensive linemen and forced fumbles with 2. So
so that's something at least. We saw reason to be optimistic about him, and if Cam does come back, now you feel like the top 4 are kind of cemented, and you feel good about the top 4. Does that mean Pittsburgh won't address defensive line in the draft? No, they easily could still address this. You have to obviously plan for the fact that Cam is not going to play for the rest of his life and could even be done before next season. If that happens, you might look for a guy that's a higher level player than what you get out of Y.A. Black as that additional starting off or defensive lineman. But that nucleus of those 4 guys, I feel good about. And honestly, as the season went along too, a big surprise for me this season was Asezi Otomewo. He got more and more playing time as the season went along, and did show a little bit of burst and a little bit of anchor. So could be someone that they continue moving forward on the roster as well, a possible nice back of the roster type dude. But I felt like he kind of distanced himself this season from Logan Lee and Isaiah Loudermilk as probably a better player than both of those guys. So that's why you got to keep on taking shots in these late rounds, right? Sometimes you hit a Logan Lee where he struggles to get on a roster and struggles to get any playing time. And then sometimes you hit a Y.A. Black where he plays a significant amount of starting time and does look like a viable option up there.
Let's transition to the linebacker group.
Yeah.
I'll talk outside linebackers first. Highsmith led the team in sacks with 9.5. Nick Herbig with 7.5. Then TJ with 7. The last outside linebacker we're looking for is Sawyer, who did have a sack on the year as well. I think there's no doubt in my mind that outside linebacker group as a whole unit, we have the best in the league. And this was an off year for TJ and Highsmith, in my opinion. I thought both of them had left more to be desired. Highsmith only played in 13 games, TJ in 14. The only one of these guys that actually, played in every game was Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer was the only one to play in all 17 games. And he also was heavily involved. Sawyer ended with 34 tackles as well. 4 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. It was an awesome year for him. TJ Watt also had 2 interceptions, and Herbig had 1. So a lot of things. I mean, Herbig and Watt also both had 3 forced fumbles, respectively. So this outside linebacker crew is just crazy when operating on all cylinders, and I wish that they develop a better rotation. I think we'd keep guys healthier a little bit more. I'm not saying they don't rotate. Obviously they do. But, man, every 2 downs, just switch them out. Give them a break for a play or 2 and then get them right back in there. This team is outside linebacker crew is huge to me moving forward.
Yeah, and I felt like it was a near breakout season for Alex Highsmith. He kind of dominated in the later portions of the season, led the team with 15 tackles for loss, and that's with less games played than T.J. Watt, less games played than Nick Herbig, probably more playing time than Nick Herbig, even though he played in less games. But leading the team in sacks, leading the teams in tackles for loss. I was a little disappointed with TJ Watt. I'm going to say it. I know that that's not a lot of things. A lot of people aren't going to want to hear that. But with as much as he played this season, he should have had a lot more than 7 sacks. And he was double teamed a lot. He was chipped a lot. But what I would like to go back to seeing, I saw a fun clip that somebody put on TikTok the other day of the time when he was playing with Derek Watt and Derek got injured. And then on the next play, TJ Watt came out and went and got a sack, right? On that play, you saw him go against a tight end first and then have to beat an offensive lineman. What you saw was him attack the tight end, jolt him backwards, and create separation. And I felt like he didn't really attack tight ends this year in the double team. It was more of I have to try to get around these guys rather than make them regret the fact that they have to try to block you. You're stronger than dang near every tight end in the NFL. Make them not want to anticipate that contact with you by how angry and aggressive you are in your contact with them. So I hope we have a bounce back year from TJ next year. I don't even hold like his final games against him because honestly, with a lung injury, how much working out could he even do? I would say basically none.
I felt like he was playing injured more often than we knew. That's what it felt like. Yeah,
and it could be. It could be, but the production wasn't there from what we're used to from TG, but we're also used to all-pro level production from TJ. So when we get a year where he has 7 sacks and he plays all but 4 games, you kind of leave yourself a little bit underwhelmed on his total production on the season. The team needs more. Yeah, I'm not saying that TJ was a bum this year. I'm saying that TJ carries this defense a lot of times. But how many more years can we expect that?
Yeah. We'll find out. Let's talk interior linemen.
We got a couple keys that I'll get out of the way here from the bold predictions at the beginning of the year. Number 1, Nick had Highsmith with 15 sacks. He did lead the team with 9.5, but he did not get to 15. So that one out, unfortunately. Jill had the team with 50 sacks and TJ getting 23. I don't know what the team
48 total.
48. Oh man, that was close. So she was real close on all of hers this year, and just unfortunately we didn't get that. I don't have a quick, easy way to look this up. Your final one was the defense allowing 20 or less touchdowns all season. I feel like that's not a hit because people scored a lot of points on us, so I'm just going to assume we didn't get that one.
I'll find out, but yeah, no.
Yeah, I think that one didn't go so well with all the points that we allowed. But we'll go on to the middle linebacker room while Cody's looking that last one up for us. Patrick Queen was kind of the leader in the unit this year. He was the green dot wearer, the quarterback of the defense. Had 120 tackles on the season. Did get 1 sack. 8 tackles for loss on the year, 4 passes deflected, and 1 forced fumble and fumble recovery. I felt like it was a very streaky year for Pat Queen. Some games he was like red hot and all over the place, and then the next game not so much. But I didn't feel like Pat was a casualty out there, not by any means. So I feel like there's still more room to grow, and we need more consistency, in my opinion, from the number 2 middle linebacker in order to get more production out of Pat. When he constantly doesn't know who's going to be lining up next to him from one play to another, that's kind of a big ask, in my opinion. Did you have that total? You look like you're kind of at a conclusion.
I can't tell if it's the number of touchdowns we scored or scored against us. But the number is 30, 41, 45.
45?
Yeah.
That's probably scored against us because just doing quick stuff, Rodgers had 24 passing touchdowns, and I think we had 11 rushing touchdowns on the year. So I'm going to say that was probably what was scored against us.
Okay.
Yeah, just unfortunately for our defense, we had a lot of games that we just allowed way too many points and way too many yards. Malik Harrison, I thought, was kind of a disappointment this year. He was billed as the run stopper, and I felt like he didn't play as well as Elandon Roberts did last year. Not that I thought Elandon Roberts was some all-star run stopper, but I felt like Malik Harrison was a drop-off from that. Peyton Wilson, probably the biggest frustration for all of us, is that he didn't get more playing time.
Yep.
We're a big Peyton Wilson podcast here. We're big fans of his. And the lack of playing time was kind of deafening in a position where we weren't getting the splash that we were hoping for. He did take over as the special teams captain after Killebrew went down for the year. But we just wanted more involvement from him. We wanted him on the field more often.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen him more. Definitely, I think, honestly, and this
he led the team in tackles. He wasn't even on the defense half the time. Peyton Wilson had 126 tackles and led the team, and he wasn't even playing probably at least a third or more of the defensive snaps.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you have a guy out like. I mean, he was a playmaker. He really was. Two sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery. I don't know how you don't put that guy on the field more.
Yeah.
And this is going to say a lot, I think, because I know that our cornerback room left a lot to be desired, but I think that interior linebacker crew was the biggest flop for me from what I expected this year. I definitely just felt like I was, and maybe not. Maybe it was the cornerback room. I mean, the cornerbacks together combined for what?
Yeah, Slay was pretty awful. So.
4 picks, 5 picks, and nobody had more than 2, and that was Brandon Echols in the cornerback room. So maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that interior linebacker crew, so much potential, and just kind of fell flat. So. I don't know if that's play calling. I don't know if that's just the way they performed. But hoping to see more out of them next year, and we need to see more Peyton Wilson.
Yeah,
that's not a question.
Yeah, I think that's the number one place that they have to start at is enough of this 3-man rotation. Pick 2 guys and go with them. And a guy like Malik Harrison can't really defend the pass very well. So the choice is obvious. If these are your 2 best guys going forward, which I'm going to just throw it out there. If one guy has 120 tackles and the other has 126, they're your 2 best guys. So I think you just have to suck it up, march those guys out there every single play and let them play. Middle linebackers can handle every snap. You don't have to sub them in and out. Just real quick, the only other guy in the middle linebacker room worth mentioning, Carson Brunner, had a real nice season on special teams. Almost made All-Pro. So that's pretty significant for a late-round pick to do that well on his tackles on special teams. So just a neat contribution from him. Defensive backfield, the corners who started the season off thinking, here's our solution. Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter Jr., who's going to be able to throw on these guys? Turned out the answer was everyone. So they had to move on from Darius Slay mid-season. Jalen Ramsey moves to safety and plays a lot better at safety than he did at corner. And then the big surprise, James Pierre gets a lot of starting time, and I thought played very well.
I think he has a chance to be a starter next year, and I don't think we would be wrong in doing that. So
yeah, I would say that's not a real big hot take, right? He had 11 pass deflections, and he only started like half the season. Joey Porter has 14 and leads the team. But the problem here is, moving forward, again, we're trying to identify who are the guys you move forward with, who do you leave behind. Asante Samuel Jr. joins the team late in the year, and I think he played decent, but didn't really have a significant impact. He's drastically younger. Pierre's already 29, but he had his best year as a corner this season. And it's tough to look at that and say you don't want that guy on your roster because of his age. We've had a lot of conversation about aging corners, and and not going that route in future seasons. But here we are. James Pierre is coming off his best year ever as a corner, being a special teams only guy pretty much most of his career. 11 pass deflections in a short period of time. I don't know how you don't bring him back and slap him at the other starting spot. I'm not saying you don't address that position in the draft, because I think you do need to. I think you do need to continue to try to reload in that position. But Pierre, I thought, played well above the line from what the expectation was. And I'd like to see him back on maybe a 2-year deal. I wouldn't go 3 because of his age, but bring him back and let him run it back, man.
Yeah, I don't know how you don't. Joey Porter Jr., one of the best rated and performing corners in the league. James Pierre would be, I think, a really good 1-2 piece in that cornerback for even a year. I mean, even a year, if you want to develop some younger guys and give some other guys a chance, I think that would be worth it. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but excited to see hopefully Pittsburgh improve in that area. I do want to say real quick that, again, I know that we're hit and miss with this stuff with Pro Football Focus, but they had him ranked. I don't even see it now. I thought he was ranked in the top 10, but I could be wrong.
Well, one thing's for sure, Joey Porter Jr. did not allow a single touchdown all season long. And I want to say his yards allowed on the season was under 400. It was a low completion percentage. He was just sticky in coverage. And the amount of penalties called against him was drastically reduced from his first 2 seasons in the league. So Joey did absolutely everything you could have asked of him, other than maybe catch the ball a couple more times. With 14 deflections, you'd like to see more than 1 interception. But that's not me talking trash on Joey, because I thought he was excellent all season long. I also was impressed more games than not with Brandon Echols. I know it's a tough thing to say after a postseason loss where he looked so bad. But most of the season, I thought Brandon Echols was very good as our nickel corner. And I would be okay with bringing him back again in that role. We didn't have another option, to be real. But most of his games, I thought he was very good as a nickel corner. Unfortunately for him, his worst game of the season was in that playoff game. But we spoke about that on our last show, indicating that there were a lot of guys that played their worst game of the year in that game.
Yeah. And actually, James Pierre had a higher PFF rating. So
that just supports our opinion of how well we thought he played, right?
Yeah. You want to look at the cornerback room, or excuse me, the safety room?
Safeties, yeah. Real quick with the safeties, I thought it was devastating to lose Deshaun Elliott so early in the season. He was the best safety that we had all year long, and to lose him for the season as early as we did was kind of it was kind of a damning thing for the defense. Let's be real. He really made up for a lot of mistakes on the back end when he was there. He was great at coming up and helping defend the run. And when he was out, you just didn't get that presence anymore. Now, Ramsey was a much more physical safety than I anticipated, probably. He had some really good moments. Kyle Duggar had some really good moments, but also had some moments where you were wondering what in the world he was thinking.
Yeah.
Chuck Clark showed the ability to hit people, but not a ton outside of that. And Juan Thornhill was so bad that he was released about the same time as Darius Slay. So we just came into the season with a room that was old, and we didn't know how it was going to play out. We were lucky enough to reacquire Sebastian Castro throughout the season, so I'm excited for the possibility of seeing him in the preseason next year. But I do hope to see Pittsburgh address this room in the first 3 rounds of the draft this upcoming season. Just because you need some youth in that room, man. Like, you can't expect that these guys are going to get better later on in their career. I mean, it's a possibility Jalen Ramsey plays better at safety next year than this year. This was his first year playing safety since college.
Yeah.
So it's possible he plays better, but don't expect him to get faster. He's too old for that.
Yeah, Deshaun in the 5 games that he played had a sack, 2 pass breakups, an interception, and a forced fumble. So
yeah,
just imagine if that was able to continue. So
it's a ton of impact for a very small amount of time.
Yeah, excited to see what the cornerback room can do, and I think Deshaun Elliott will be back next year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah, I want to say he got like a 2-year extension or something. So I want to say he's back. Ramsey's back too. Duggar's contract, I believe, was just 1 year. Clark ought to be gone as well. So you do have an opportunity to really reset the depth there at the safety position and try to develop some guys behind these people who have played at a high level in front of them. It's a great opportunity for that room. You ready to kick it over to special teams?
I like what you did there. Boswell. We'll go Boswell first. 27 field goals made on 32 attempts. Probably one of his worst years, honestly. 84.4 field goal percentage. 60-yarder was his long. And then obviously had the one extra point, I believe, blocked is what we decided. But it goes down as a miss. So 42 of 43 there. And then just real quick, I mean, I don't want to go off Boswell too fast, but there's not much to talk about. I mean, Boswell was fairly consistent. That's what we expect from him. Again, his worst year probably as a pro, and I can look that up real quick to find out. But
I want to say he had one where he missed like 6 or 7 field goals, so the 5 missed field goals isn't as big of a red flag for me. I try to remember context on it too. His first miss of the year was a block, so I don't hold that against him. His second one, a giant divot moved underneath his plant foot, so I don't hold that one against him either. So I kind of put it as, of the 6 missed kicks this season, 2 of them were blocked, and one of them the field literally moved under his plant foot. So I'll call it 3 legitimate missed field goals this year, and I'm not as concerned about that.
Yeah, he's had 2 other years worse than that. He had a 71.4 field goal percentage in 2022, playing in 12 games. And then in 2018, he was 13 of 20 in field goals. So
oof, that's a rough one. That's 65%. That sucks. But the thing is with Chris is when he has a bad year, I think almost every time he's bounced back and had an excellent year the following year. So I'm not real concerned about him. Corliss Waitman finished on a high note. You know, there were some rough games in the cold weather where it wasn't so good. But his last game of the season, I thought, was one of his best, and he had a lot of really good games throughout the course of the season. So from what we're used to in the punting position, I thought that Waitman was a pretty big upgrade versus what Presley Harvin gave us for years at that position. And even guys before Presley kind of sucked as well. The return game I thought was very anticlimactic this year. We just didn't get the big returns. Consistently decent return in. Gainwell averaged 24.3 yards per kick return. Kayshawn Williams, when he was in there, 23.6. Jalen Warren, 25.6. Caleb Johnson, 23.8. The big returns just weren't there. The longest kick return of the season was 37 yards. The longest punt return of the season, I want to say, was Scotty Miller, which I don't think I see punt returns, just kick returns. So I guess I don't have that in front of me, but I know that Scotty Miller had the longest punt return on the season. I want to say it was only like 17 or 18 yards or something.
25.
25, there we go. But it was longer than anything that Calvin had, and he returned almost all the punt returns on the season. So that would be one thing I would love to see Pittsburgh do a better job of next year is the return game. The coverage game was incredible. Pittsburgh's punt coverage and kickoff coverage was probably best in the league. You had 2 guys in all-pro consideration that almost made it first and second team all-pro. Ben Skoranek was number 3 in voting in the all-pros, and Carson Bruner was right behind him. Incredible job from our coverage units. Just the return units weren't as good. And you have to wonder if some of that was just because all the guys doing it had bigger responsibilities on offense. You know, it's tough for those guys to be 100% focused on their return duties when they got to go out there and be a starting running back or a starting wide receiver most of the season.
Who had the longest punt return or kick return? Excuse me.
The longest kick return, Kayshawn Williams, 37 yards.
Okay, so he was also ranked 58th in longest kick return on the year. So there was 57 other guys from other teams that had more than that. So I want to put that into a little perspective.
Yeah. So I think that's an accurate thing for us to hope for better return production in future years. And I just want to see that responsibility be kicked onto somebody who's not a starter in the lineup.
Agreed.
Let's have it be a dynamic kick return man instead of a starting running back or your number 2 running back or a starting wide receiver. Let's move that on to some other people who can focus on that and spend more time dissecting what other return men are doing that are working rather than working on their number 1 craft, and then the return duties are a secondary part of their job description.
Yep.
So that kind of brings us to the end of the season in review stuff. Is there anything else you wanted to speak on any of these guys or anything we missed on?
No, I think the big thing is there's some highlights to look forward to for next year. Guys coming back. I mean, the 2 things that I'm most excited for probably is that outside linebacker crew and the offensive line. I think we have a really good chance if TJ is healthy and Highsmith's healthy, that they can both get double-digit sacks next year. And then obviously that offensive line gelling and getting more in sync with each other and staying healthy could really bode well for Will Howard or whatever quarterback we throw in there. I'm hoping it's Will Howard. I think he deserves a chance. I mean, he's a freaking national champion in college football. I think we got to see what he has. So I hope they don't rush getting someone else in to compete necessarily. I don't think it's bad to have competition, but I think he deserves a chance to start in the regular season. But hopefully he learned from Aaron. So just excited to see what happens next year. That is for sure. Did we have any notes or anything to say from Nick? I thought he might have said something.
I don't think he had anything that he wanted us to go over for him on his season in review stuff. I'm kind of scrolling back through our conversations to see if there's anything. But no, but we've got a lot to talk about.
I got it.
Okay.
He said, really loving the reserve contracts we've signed thus far, and the coaching interview list is shaping up nicely as well. So those are just the 2 big things that he wanted to add on. So I think we've kind of addressed those and are right as well. I'm curious to see maybe in the future if he shares who he's excited about with that reserve list, if it's anything different from the 2 that we discussed. So hopefully next week we'll have the full crew, and then we have a lot of college stuff to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get you guys all caught up on the list of the coaching candidates next week. We felt like that was just too much to add on to this show, too, as we're already going on about an hour and a half here. So it's looking like a good list already. A lot of top-tier defensive coordinators and offensive minds out there. I think Pittsburgh's got a great list going on of about 8 candidates so far. Also, upcoming shows here, we've got the East-West Shrine Bowl coming up on the 27th, the Senior Bowl coming up on the 31st. We'll give you breakdowns on players that we felt had good performances in those games and might be good fits for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, too. So a lot going to go on in the next few weeks here. We'll have a new head coach probably in the next 2-3 weeks is my guess, because they have to get that together for this offseason program to figure out the scouting. It's time. Scouting is happening right now, and you need a coaching staff to go do it. So a lot's going to happen in a short amount of time here, and we will be here every single week to cover that for you guys.
Yeah, we can't thank you guys enough for listening. Be sure to like and follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell. It's free. Doesn't cost you a thing. Don't forget the 5-star reviews and Apple Podcasts make everybody on the show very happy, especially James. And we will see you guys on the next one.
Peace.